While it's said that you can't please everyone all of the time, it remains a good idea to please at least some of the people some of the time. Occasionally. With that in mind, today's battle mech, the 80-ton Charger, holds a curiously positive position in the minds of many in BattleTech circles. The fact that it has not yet received its 15 minutes of fame on this channel has resulted in more than one spicy comment. Today, you get your wish. I hope it's everything you wanted and more. Our plucky Charger has been through quite a bit over the centuries and continues to endure. While widely considered an underperformer, or just a flat-out failure, the Charger has persisted and found its fans both in and out of universe. Stick around after the intro and we'll see if we can't sort out why this is the case. By the time he sat on the overstuffed couch, a match was already underway. One mech warrior named Ty Smith was piloting a Charger. Though massing an impressive 80 tons, the battle mech was notorious for being underarmed and moderately armored. Still, in the arena's ultra-close quarters, Smith was, through sheer aggressive piloting, able to overcome a significantly better-armed cataphract. Ace made a mental note of Smith, wishing to see if the Gladiator was open to recruitment to the mercenary trade. Their skills at the Charger's controls were that impressive. Fortune and Glory, Part 2, Shrapnel Number 22 by James Bixby. The CGR-1A1 Charger was designed and first constructed during a period of relative peace within the Star League. Though machinations were afoot in the periphery, when are there not, new battle mech designs were not under the pressure of imminent need. While this kind of environment could have been conducive to innovation, it also allows for flights of fancy which aren't always the most practical. When the design team at Wells Technologies laid out their plans for an assault-class battle mech that would serve as a scout, they believed they were firmly in the innovation bucket. Crafted from a Wells 990 standard chassis wrapped around an LTV 400 Fusion engine, the Charger maxed out the possible speed for an 80-ton battle mech at the time. The top speed of 86.4 km per hour allowed for travel at a rate comparable to medium-class battle mechs of the time. While the 10 tons of Duralex standard armor plating was modest in comparison to the possible 15.5 tons that it could have carried, designers argued that in its role as a scout, the 160 points of armor would be more than enough to protect the mech from incoming fire. With a 580 movement profile, a moderate amount of armor, and 10 single heat sinks, the Charger's weapons loadout had to be substantive, right? Right? Oh no. As it turned out, cramming in a 52.5-ton 400 Fusion engine into an 80-ton battle mech doesn't leave much after all the other bells and whistles like a functioning cockpit and gyro are added. In fact, the Charger 1A1 was only able to pack on 2.5 tons of weapons and equipment. In the case of the original, that was spent on 5 Magna Mark I small lasers scattered across the mech's upper torso and head. Now, if you're thinking that's an embarrassing lack of punch even with 2.5 tons to work with, well, you're not alone. When challenged on the mech's loadout, the Charger design team defended it by saying the Charger was not intended for getting involved in stand-up fights with other battle mechs. Giving the mech more powerful weaponry would give the Mechwarrior the false impression that stopping to fight was an option. In a perfect world, the Charger would quickly enter enemy territory, collect intel, and spot for indirect fire before fleeing back to safer pastures. The small lasers were deemed effective against infantry and light vehicles, but not much else. We can accept that explanation or not, but it is what it is. Surprisingly, the Charger did find buyers, and Wells Technology pushed the mech into full production. Many of the Chargers ended up used in garrison deployments where being large and relatively fast was enough to establish dominance over petty criminals and pirates sporting cobbled-together Frankenmechs and lighter machines. Interestingly, the Capellan Confederation showed interest in the Charger and ended up adding it to their ranks, though typically not in frontline units. When deployed to the Lyran-controlled planet of Chara in 3023, Capellan Chargers had the opportunity to shine in their intended role as scouts when the supply of wasps and stingers ran low. Surprisingly, the Chargers fared well and were able to absorb incoming fire from the enemy counter-scouts. Problems for the Chargers mounted when the Lyran sent reinforcements in the form of Griffins and Wolverines, who were able to punch through armor at a much faster pace. Though ultimately the scouting Charger plan was deemed less successful than a more traditional force would have been, some of these scouting assault mechs did return with intel which helped the future planning. The biggest complaint from Charger mech warriors was the total inability to participate in a fight until they were in close range. When caught out in the open or pressed into a fight on unfavorable terms, often the Chargers would be burned down into scrap without any return fire. The price of hyper-specialization was paid for in the blood of many frustrated mech warriors. There were reports wherein the Charger shined, often when used in environments that were hostile to conventional mech forces, but there were the exceptions which proved the rule, and the Charger in its original form was deemed a failed design. Though production continued, most Chargers ended up in second-line or garrison units in the Capellan Confederation and Draconis Combine. Most of the rest of the company, hell, the battalion, was already dead or out of the fight, so he hadn't minded not getting his own company. He'd brought his lance through all right. Behind Truly's Zeus, Timmy Store's big Charger was helping January's Wolfhound to its feet. The 35-ton mech had fallen when a snake stinger came down out of a jump on its shoulders, but Timmy's 80-ton Charger had taken care of that jock with one big foot. Pressure. Death to Mercenaries by Jason Schmetzer. There would eventually be attempts to fix the Charger, or if not fix, at least try something new. The Capellans sought to boost the offensive power of the mech with their 3022 refit, designated the CGR-1L. Unable to do anything about the gigantic engine at that point, the only other option was to shed even more armor plating. The small lasers were all removed in favor of a right arm-mounted large laser and a pair of medium lasers split between the side torsos. The mass was paid for by dropping the overall armor to just 5.5 tons. Yep, you heard that correctly, 5.5 tons. With the speed and now the defense of a particularly under-armored medium mech, the Charger 1L could theoretically hit targets with its lasers and cause middling damage. The flaw in that plan, well, one of the flaws in the plan was the heat generated by the 3 lasers while on the run, since there were no additional heat sinks added to the mech. While technically it could run and gun with the large laser without any heat buildup, an Alpha Strike on the run left the mech at 6 heat into the red. Leaving the 2 medium lasers out of the mix most of the time would undercut the purpose of their installation, and time was of the essence when you only had 5.5 tons of armor coverage. The Charger 1L sure is a mech, just not one that could move it far from the gimmick niche design of the original. Just a year later, the Draconis Combine debuted their own reimagining of the Charger with a more extensive refit. Admitting that the 400 engine was just too much, the CGR-1A5's power plant was downgraded to a 320 fusion engine, which dropped the movement profile of the mech to 460. The less powerful engine allowed for a much more balanced build, including 13 single heat sinks and 15 tons of standard plate armor. The weapons loadout for the 1A5 suddenly became a threat with the addition of an AC-20 autocannon in the right torso, fed by 2 tons of ammunition in the left torso. That short-range punch was bolstered with the addition of 2 short-range missile 6 racks, both installed into the left torso along with 1 ton of ammunition. A standard medium laser in the center torso added a little bit more punch, and finally an emotional support small laser was installed into the mech's open head critical location. Even with the 3 additional heat sinks, heat generation could be an issue for the Charger 1A5. However, the possible perfect moment Alpha Strike had the power to seriously damage and even incapacitate heavy and assault mechs. This was quite a shift away from the original Charger. While undoubtedly more powerful and a more balanced design, some fans of the original 1A1 were critical of the cut in the mech's speed. Could a charger still be a charger if it couldn't charge? It's a question for the ages. Captain Harrison spat blood onto the wall of his cockpit. The taste of copper was overwhelming. His teeth felt loose. He rolled his Marauder to its side and pushed off the ground. Back to his feet, he stared down at the dead charger that had tackled him moments before. The assault mech lay face down on the ground, its rear torso torn apart by PPC and autocannon fire. Harrison raised his mech's talon-like foot and stomped down on the charger's head. Bastard. Breakthrough, Shrapnel number 22, by Jack Trimble. The Combine's efforts to turn the Charger into a competitive machine continued, and in 3034 the DCMS and other Combine-affiliated units were sporting a brand new variant designated the CGR-1A9. This fresh take on the mech retained the smaller engine but boosted overall agility through the addition of 4 jump jets, pushing the movement profile to 464. The armor coverage was dropped back to a more modest and familiar 10 tons, and a grand total of 22 single heatsinks were installed to keep the 1A9 running cool. For the first time, the Charger would receive some serious long-range weaponry in the form of a long-range Missile 20 rack set into the right torso. It fed from 2 tons of ammunition in the left torso and must have been appreciated by mech warriors who always faced the possibility of being caught out in the open and forced to trudge through enemy fire without response. Once the Charger got to where it was going, it could employ 4 medium lasers, which were scattered 1 to each side torso and arms. Finally, the emotional support small laser in the head was retained, thankfully. Better to have it not need it than need it not have it. The Charger 1A9 is a bit of an odd duck as it was oversynced, and the LRM-20 is a big investment of 12 tons for a battle mech that usually wants to get close. Like it or not, the 1A9 would end up setting the stage not just for newer variants of the Charger, but a new design that would become synonymous with the Draconis Combine. She was halfway to her goal when the Charger appeared behind her, with a straight shot at her back. The warble of an alarm told her he had her in his gun sights. She hit her jump jets, trying to throw off his firing solution. She glanced at her rear monitor as her javelin descended through its arc. She saw a flash of emerald light as the Charger fired its quintet of lasers. The massive mech's assault shook her just as she descended, savagely tearing her balance from her. She came crashing down in a bone-jarring fall that smashed her against her couch. Red Kopesh by Stephen Mohan, Jr. By the late 3040s, Luthien Armor Works and Sapphire Metals were tapped to take yet another look at the Charger. This time, however, Helm Memory Core technology promised to bring new life to an old premise. The Hatamoto Chi program had converted many of the previously produced Charger chassis into the new pride of the DCMS. However, the Luthien Armor Works engineers still saw promise with the existing Charger line. The CGR-3K Charger presented a return to the top speed of 86 km per hour thanks to the installation of a Hermes 400 extra light fusion engine. This dropped the mass down to 26.5 tons and opened the door for a significant overhaul. 5 Lexington Limited lifter jump jets pushed the movement profile to 585, 12 double heat sinks were installed, and the traditional 10 tons of armor was upgraded to ferrofibrous produced on new Samarkand. With all the other mandatory bits and pieces, that left 21.5 tons of mass to give the Charger some offensive punch. The loadout was similar to the 1A9, but with the Helm Memory Core tech shine on it. The Shogunga LRM-20 in the right torso made its return along with its 2 tons of ammunition in the left torso. However, this time that side torso was given case to protect the Mechwarrior in the center torso from any ammunition-related mishaps. The LRM-20 was further aided by the addition of an Artemis 4 fire control system, which improved the accuracy of those 12 included shots. The remaining mass was devoted to 4 Victory Heartbeat medium pulse lasers, which proved to be particularly useful for close-range combat with fast movers and clan elementals who had more courage than good sense. Luthien's 3K Charger proved to be quite useful as the first production runs were completed just as the Smoke Jaguars barged into the Draconis Combine looking for a ruckus. Did you hear a ruckus? Because I heard a ruckus. Even though the 3K was a little bit more fragile than before and devoted an astounding 13.5 tons on that LRM-20 launcher, reception from DCMS units was positive. The speed and agility counted for a lot, as well as the improved all ranges damage output. Beyond use as a scrapper against clan units, by 3068 every regular DCMS unit contained at least one of these upgraded chargers. Though the charger would occasionally be found in the militaries of other houses, particularly the Capellans, they were few and far between and often the older models. Only the Kuritans retained their connection to the charger, and largely due to the newer variants. This included the CGR-C sub-variant of the 3K, which dropped one of the medium pulse lasers in favor of adding a third ton of LRM ammunition and a right torso-mounted C3 computer. Obviously intended to operate within the C3 network, the CGR-C had its uses. With a third ton of LRM ammo, it's not a terrible speedy fire support option. Something to ponder. Rose's blood ran cold. All Mechwarriors dreaded facing the Hatchet Man's axe, preferring to take out the 45-ton brute before it could get close enough to use the hatchet. That was not an option tonight. The charger's weight and speed made it a formidable enemy in close quarters. In a match where each mech used all of its available resources, the charger's small lasers did not provide enough ranged firepower to be a real threat. But in this situation, those two mechs changed the balance of power dramatically. Main Event by James D. Long. The next leap forward for the Charger arrived in 3063 with the SA-5 variant, which earned a reputation as a nasty close-range brawler. It's a pretty dangerous machine, so it's worth a gander. The SA-5 was constructed from endosteel wrapped around a 320 light fusion engine, which set this Charger apart from any of its previous variants. The 460 movement profile could be boosted to 4.8 for a short time thanks to the installation of mask in the left torso. 15.5 tons of standard plate provided plenty of defensive strength, and 12 double heatsinks were installed to keep the mech running relatively cool. Returning to the Charger's roots as a short-range brawler, the weapons loadout was focused on encouraging its mechwarrior to move in close. Unlike the 1A1, the SA-5 could back up the bluster thanks to an LB-20X autocannon set into the right and center torso. The massive autocannon fed from 3 tons of case-protected ammunition in the left torso. That's 15 shots again if you need the refresher. 3 ER medium lasers were split between the side torsos and the open head critical location, providing solid and reliable fire. Finally, of course, we couldn't forget about the 2 Streak short-range Missile 6 racks set into the left arm, which fed from a single ton of case-protected ammunition in the left torso. The overall potential Alpha Strike damage was 59, which was not half bad for an 80-ton mech that was once throwing haymakers with 5 small lasers. The heat generation for that would be painful, but sometimes when it's right, it's right. It was exactly the kind of machine that the DCMS Mechwarriors were looking for, and it was popular with almost all units except for the Ghost regiments, which preferred the KMZ variant, which was first spotted in 3071. The CGR KMZ saw a return to the 320 extra light fusion engine, but benefited from improved agility thanks to 6 improved jump jets, which pushed that movement profile to 466. 11 tons of light ferrofibrous armor provided 186 points of protection, and 12 double heatsinks could get a workout. Of course, the biggest draw for the KMZ was the weapons loadout, which is very on brand for the Kuritans. Starting with its longest range weapon, a multi-missile 9 launcher was installed into the right torso and fed by 2 tons of ammunition stored in the right arm. This is notable as that right torso did have case. Keep that arm safe until you can burn through that ammunition. At 18 hexes and closer, things started to get really interesting. The left arm sported a pair of light PPCs which could do 5 damage apiece. The heavy PPC in the left torso was the heavy hitter with 15 damage shots. Now you might be thinking 3 PPCs, that's great and all, but what about the minimum range of 3? Well, that's where the right arm sword comes into play. Though it does only 9 damage, the sword does have a -2 to hit bonus, which is good enough to catch even swift light mechs that wander too close. While the visceral appeal of the KMZ is obvious, the 12 double heatsinks were the limiting factor. Use of PPCs in conjunction with jump jet leaps and missile launches could be a challenge for new mech warriors. It's probably worth a try though if you are the adventurous type. Stepping back a bit on the timeline to 3064, the CGR-2A2 demands some attention as a suspiciously low-tech option for fire and chaos. Spotted among the forces of the Outworlds Alliance, this variant was the result of a bit of questionable legal shenanigans, which resulted in Ravina Electronics obtaining a license to produce their own chargers. The 2A2 looked a lot like the original Succession Wars charger, except for the 9 tons of ferrofibrous armor. The 580 movement profile was there, along with 10 single heatsinks. What made this variant unique was the use of 5 rocket launcher 10s installed, 2 into each side torso and 1 in the left arm. The only other weapon on the mech was a standard medium laser in the right arm. While the potential one-time damage of up to 55 could be useful for a surgical strike or ambush, the mech would be left largely defenseless beyond the medium laser and kick-punching like an 80s B-movie hero. At the cost of nearly 8 million C-bills by Megamech's estimate, the Charger 2A2 was a risky bet. Despite what most civilians thought, each mech was unique. Except for the gross differences between individual designs, each mech tended to take on the personality of its own. Indeed, part of the difficulty in becoming familiar with a new mech, no matter what the design, was learning the subtle changes that were part of the system. Like all charges, Rose's was extremely fast, especially considering the 80-ton weight. It was also capable of jumping 150 meters, a phenomenal distance for an assault mech. Before launching those 80 tons into the air, however, Rose wanted to get to know the mech a lot better. Originally built on Luthien, this particular charger's cockpit was completely annotated in Japanese. Converting that to English had been Rose's first order of business once the mech left Solaris. Main Event by James D. Long. Now, if you've stuck around this long, you deserve a reward, so let's talk about the CGR-1X1, an experimental refit created by a team at Starcore Industries on Sonoa. Taking an ancient CGR-1A, Dr. Leonard Jameson decided, for some inexplicable reason, to upgrade every system and part possible without any fiscal responsibility. Brace yourself, gird your loins, or take a few deep breaths. Whatever you need to do, this is a wild one. Starting with a 400XL engine and the original standard structure, we're off to the races. The 580 movement profile could be boosted to 513 with the addition of the left torso supercharger and mask in the right torso. 12.5 tons of heavy ferrofibrous armor provided 247 points of protection. The 10 double heatsinks replaced the original singles. The mech's comm and targeting systems were supplemented by the addition of an Angel ECM system, a C3 boosted computer, target acquisition gear, and a Bloodhound active probe. To bolster the mech's defenses, a laser anti-missile system was installed into the right torso, and a chaff pod was set into the left torso. I did try to warn you this was going to get wild. Finally, after all that, Jameson did get around to adding some offensive weaponry, but don't get your hopes up. The remaining 7 tons of mass of the mech were devoted to an ER large laser in the center torso and a medium X pulse laser in the right side. What we're left here is a well-defended but incredibly expensive 80-ton scout mech that could run the buyer almost 24 million C-bills by Megamech's estimation. It's all the more bizarre that when questions arose concerning the tremendous expense and minuscule payoff of the 1X1, any response from Dr. Jameson was not recorded for posterity. Needless to say, the Charger 1X1 did not reach production. The last of the 31st century Charger variants was the CGR-3KR, which was a sub-variant of the Combine's 3K model. The 3KR benefited from the larger XL engine, 10 double heatsinks, and 12.5 tons of light ferrofibrous armor, as well as the use of triple-strength Myomer and 5 jump jets. The weapon's loadout was quite unique as it featured a snub-nosed PPC in the left arm. A light PPC was nestled in next to it, and their fire was supplemented by 2 ER medium lasers split between the side torsos, a standard medium laser in the right torso, and a standard small laser in the center torso. And finally, an emotional support ER small laser was installed into the open head critical location. All of the lasers and PPCs were then boosted by a left torso targeting computer. The last addition to the 3KR was a right arm mounted sword which could do 9 damage with a -2 accuracy boost, or 18 damage if the mech was hot enough to kick in with the triple strength Milliorn. Kicks with the TSM could still do 32 damage, but let's not pretend that we're going to pass up using a giant sword in the moment. With plenty of different laser options, the Charger 3KR's Mechwarrior could easily hit the triple strength Milliorn conditional to consistently move quicker and hit harder. Though it looks like a mess at first glance, in practice there's plenty of options on the table and it's possible to close in on targets quickly. Sure, the XL engine adds some vulnerability, but Charger Mechwarriors are around for a fun time, not a long time. The most recent revamp of the Charger on the timeline is one that has pushed a few buttons and turned a few heads. When Clan Snowraven and the Outworlds Alliance formed their new working agreement following the Word of Blake kerfuffle, there was considerable huffing and puffing over who was going to do what, where, and when. The leadership of Ravina Electronics on Remora was initially opposed to the alliance until they were offered the technology to reopen their Charger line. This Charger, designated the Charger C, not to be confused with the CGRC from earlier in the timeline, would feature a considerable clan tech upgrade. The first Charger Cs stomped off the assembly lines on Remora in 3130, and from the ground up they were largely clan tech. This included the pricey 400XL engine, clan spec mask, and 17.5 tons of ferrolamellar armor. Just the 15 double heatsinks were inner sphere spec, and that's because they're all in the engine anyway. Have to save money where you can these days, am I right? The left torso-mounted supercharger further bolstered the Charger's speed, making it possible to push the movement profile up to 513 when used in conjunction with the mask. Now we're cooking with kerosene. Of course, if the Charger is going to be true to its original purpose, it needs to be both sneaky and able to gather intel. The C is bolstered in this with an Angel ECM in the center torso along with a Bloodhound active probe in the right torso. Operation Sneaky Sneak is go. Should the Charger C run into any issues or impediments, it could rely upon its collection of lasers, all aided by a right torso targeting computer. The longest range weapon was an ER medium laser in the open head critical location. For closer range spats, 4 medium improved heavy lasers offered surprisingly powerful 10 damage per laser out to 9 hexes. These were split 1 per arm inside torsos, with all 4 benefiting from case, since the heavy lasers do occasionally suffer from unplanned disassembly events should they be tapped during a fight. The total possible Alpha Strike damage while on the run was 47, though that would leave the mech at 5 heat, which is actually not the end of the world at all. You could do that all day. Go ahead. While it could be tempting to declare the Charger C the mech in its ultimate form, it required a lot of advanced tech and expense to get there. Megamech estimates the overall cost of the mech would be 33 million C-bills, which is a lot for an admittedly quite effective scouting assault mech. With a battle value of 2,826, it's not a mech that can be flippantly added to a unit without plenty of strategery. Those who believe that the Raven Alliance is a pushover as we waltz into the IlClan era might be surprised by how quickly an 80-ton battle mech can get up in your business. Tai Wu Non had already lost too many warriors to see Eris fall in front of his eyes. He stabbed down on one of his thumb triggers, sending a full flight of 20 long-range missiles from the Charger's torso-mounted launcher. His right torso kicked back under the sudden thrust of the launching missiles. Before his computer could register any hits, Tai kicked his mech into running speed and closed on the Atlas. 80 tons of charging assault mech would give Fallon something to think about. Binding Force by Lauren L. Coleman. Now, I did want to take a crack at creating my very own totally non-canon and unofficial Mechfrog variant for the Charger. Stepping back a bit on the timeline, I chose the CGR SA5 as the base, so the CGR SAMF could be considered a sub-variant. The structural stuff remained unchanged except for an adjustment to 14 double heatsinks. The light fusion engine is the smaller 320 power, yet mask and an installed supercharger can boost that movement profile up to 10 when the time is right. To promote a long and healthy life for the mech and Mechwarrior, a Guardian ECM suite sits in the left torso and an anti-missile system was installed into the right torso along with its 1 ton of ammunition. Since the Charger is often out trying to get as close to the enemy as possible, I included a NARC beacon launcher in the left torso to help with any friendly fire support units in the vicinity. The primary punch for the mech was a pair of plasma rifles split between the arms that feed from 3 tons of ammunition stored in the side torsos as crit buffers. Doing 10 damage with 1d6 added heat to heat-synced targets, the MF's opponents could find it difficult to return fire consistently. 2 ER medium lasers split between the side torsos offered their reliable 5 points of damage apiece, and finally, in case the target isn't already warm enough, a heavy flamer in the right torso can resolve all sorts of disagreements. Heat generation could be tricky, but it is manageable in all but a full Alpha Strike option. Even then, it's just 9 spare heat, which could be worth it if the target is also looking at similar heat issues after being hit with the plasma rifles and heavy flamer. If you're interested in giving the Charger SAMF a try, I've included the record sheet and Alpha Strike card for it in the video notes below. Come back and let me know how it performs. So why do we love the Charger? This is a tough one because as bad a reputation as the mech has in-universe, I'd estimate from what I've seen from players, it is actually a community favorite. Perhaps not as beloved as the Urban Mech and Timberwolf, but it's still on the list. While the world may favor a generalist, specialized battle mechs tend to build an enthusiastic, if not zealous, fanbase. Personally, my favorite bit of fluff for the Charger is its connection to Jeremiah Rose and the Black Thorns. Rose purchased his CGR 3K variant while on Solaris, and it became a staple of the Blackthorn's shenanigans moving forward. Though Rose would eventually upgrade to a Warhawk, his Charger remained in the Merc unit, passed typically to new mech warriors like Greta Podell, who would cut their teeth in an assault mech. The practice reflected Rose's intense personal struggle with sending those under his command into harm's way. Plus, it was fun for the new recruits to joke about how they were borrowing the CO's battle mech. No matter how you feel about the Charger, it's undeniable that it has character and is one of those machines that tests the boundaries of good mech design. Nature may love a generalist, but specialists do sometimes shine. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and even leave a comment. All of those things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you want to go one step further, direct support through Ko-fi or a YouTube channel membership is a great way to help ensure that the nonsense keeps flowing. I can't do this without your support, and I appreciate it. If you'd like to join the nonsense on the MechFrog Discord channel, we'd love to see you. I've included a link to the server in the video notes. It's the best way to find out what's coming up next week, talk to BattleTech fans, share your awesome mech paint jobs, and otherwise hang out with some pretty amazing people. With that, I'll say have a great week. Take care of yourselves and others, and please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.